Good evening. I call this meeting of October 22nd, 2020 to order at 7:03. The regular board meeting for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 will be conducted completely online. The Governor's Executive Order N-25-20 relaxes the Brown Act requirements for holding public meetings via teleconference. Per normal practice, this meeting will be recorded, live streamed, and televised. Members of the public may attend via the public viewing link located on PUSD website. Public viewing link will be provided via TV 28 on cable TV or by streaming from TV 28 at www.tv30.org. Per normal practice, the meeting will be live streamed and available at www.tv30.org for viewing and also broadcast live on Comcast TV channel 28 beginning a few minutes ago. Online speaker slips will be available and the public will be able to call in using a computer or smartphone via a link which will be provided following submission of a speaker slip. A telephonic option will also be available. Once connected, the public speaker will be placed in an online waiting room. While in the waiting room, the public speaker should watch or listen to the meeting via the outlets above, as they will not see or hear the meeting while they are connected and waiting to speak. When the agenda item upon which the individual would like to comment is addressed, the speaker will be announced in the meeting as to when it is his or her time to speak to the school board, Board of Trustees. The speaker will then be moved to the meeting for comment. TV 30 is allowing only audio at this time, adding a full screen public comment when the speaker is talking. In an effort to make our board meetings more accessible to our community, we have a new process for accessing closed captioning and providing input through public comment. Please find directions for accessing closed captioning on tonight's meeting's agenda and also on PUSD's website. Yellow comment forms are for items only on the agenda. Individual speakers shall be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board on this item for sake of time. At this time, I would like everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Rachel, if you would please do it for us.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rachel. Very good. Okay, I would like to introduce our Board of Trustees. First of all, we have Trustee Mark Miller, Trustee Joan Larson, Trustee Valerie Arkin, Board Vice President Jamie Yee, on Board President Steve Maher, Julio Hernandez, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Ahmed Shiko Leslami, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Ed Dialazzo, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Dr. Janelle Woodward, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Superintendent David Heiglin, Dr. David Heiglin, Patrick Gannon, Coordinator of Communications and Community Engagement, Lanita Villasenor, Administrative Assistant to the Business Service Division, who will be helping us out during this transition, and Rachel Zhang, Amador Valley High School. At this time, I would like to report out on the action that was taken in closed session. Item number 2.3. On closed session item 2.3, the board voted 5-0 and moved by Trustee Miller and seconded by Trustee Arkin to reject claim number 584423. And that's all the action that was taken. Okay, now I have the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
And Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And Trustee Maher, aye. Motion carries, passed. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Haglund for our recognitions and introductions.
Thank you, President Maher. For this recognition, I'm going to turn over the mic to HR Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Julio Hernandez.
Good evening, President Maher, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Haglund, committee and staff. On October 6th, we had a community open house, which was an event that showcased our teachers and the great work that they're doing with our students in our community. I often comment to my colleagues that Pleasanton Unified is a 10th ranked school district in the 5th largest economy in the world, and in large part because of the community that we serve, but in great part because of the staff that teaches and works here with us. They were gracious enough on this day to allow us to visit their classrooms, and I want to thank them for allowing us to do that. And I want to thank those who participated in this community open house. Carla Brown, Vice Mayor, City of Pleasanton, Kathy Nerem, Council Member, City of Pleasanton, and Jerry Pinton, Council Member, City of Pleasanton. Thank you for joining us in our community open house. Additionally, we had the Assembly Member, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, who took time out of her schedule to join us that day as well and visit a number of our classrooms to see the great work that our teachers are involved in. Also joining us was Jennifer Rizzo. She's a Tri-Valley Senior District Representative for Senator Glazer. Thank you also for joining us. Among the participants were also Steve Maher, the President of the Board, Jamie Yee, the Vice President of the Board, Trustee Arkin, Trustee Larson, and Trustee Miller also participated in our community open house. Additionally, Executive Cabinet and also Amy Nichols, the Director of Technology Services, and Michelle Verkeilen, the President of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. I want to thank you all for participating as panelists and visiting the various classrooms that day. Now, I want to particularly thank those teachers who allowed us to visit their classroom. I want to start off with Chris Ragg, our math teacher at PMS, Tessie Gonzalez, science teacher at Harvest Park, Cherry Hangen, Project Lead the Way, Hart, Anna et Letona, STC teacher at ALSAL, Felicia Dowes, a 3rd grade DI at Valley View, Brian Campiotti, PE teacher at Fairlands, Lennis Sadler, 5th grade DI teacher at Valley View, Patrick Dengrea, music teacher at Amador, Gary Johnson, aerospace engineer, teacher at Foothill, Jennifer Kelly, AP calculus teacher at Foothill, and Tony Dennis, Amador, 6th period digital electronics and honors. I want to thank you all for allowing us to visit your classrooms and for showcasing the great work that our teachers are doing with our students. At this time, I want to introduce Chris Ragg, who has agreed graciously to speak on behalf of our teachers. Mr. Ragg?
Hello, and hi, Rachel. Good to see you. So thank you all for coming to see how hard teachers are working on behalf of our Pleasanton students. As you visited a variety of classrooms, you saw the innovation that teachers have employed to create dynamic and engaging lessons during remote learning while still being sensitive to our students' social emotional well-being. We hope that you learned a bit about what the classroom experience is like for our students and had some fun along the way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for participating in the program. Thank you, Dr. Hagwin.
Okay. Brings us to item number 7. This is our representatives from the associations. I'd like to start with 7.1, Association of Pleasanton Teachers, APT. I'd like to introduce APT President Michelle Verkeilen.
Evelyn, members of the cabinet and our community. It's okay. My name is Sam Weaver, and I am the Vice President of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. I am here to speak on behalf of our President, Michelle Verkeilen, the hundreds of members of our union, and our students this evening. I've been teaching civics and government at Amador Valley for about a decade now. One of the joys that comes with teaching about our political system is that the students quickly see the real-world impact of the curriculum. One of the challenges is adapting that same curriculum in real time as the world around us changes. With the rapid changes we've been experiencing these past 7 months, we are still unable to accurately predict what is next. Dr. Woodward has described our situation as the current normal that we must adjust to. We, Pleasanton's teachers, have been diligently creating the current normal as only we can. We are constantly collaborating with our peers, rewriting lesson plans to deliver in a virtual setting, and developing new assessment strategies to effectively measure student success. This is the current normal we are in. As school boards start the conversation towards the possibility of reopening, we need to be mindful of all the challenges that come with reopening. First and foremost is student and staff safety. While Alameda County, on average, might be having fewer cases, we are seeing concerning numbers that affect us. We are not isolated here in Pleasanton. We have teachers who come in from Oakland where there is the highest concentration of cases. We have teachers who commute in from the Central Valley. Less than a week after a limited reopening, a high school in Modesto was shut down for 2 weeks, yo-yoing teachers and students between the known and the unknown. An article by Josh Edelson in Bloomberg Businessweek details the toll that reopening has on teachers. Jessica Torrance, a teacher in Kissimmee, Florida, says that coming to class has, quote, driven her through cycles of depression, denial, anger, activism, and anxiety. She even vomited into a plastic bag in her classroom closet so that her students wouldn't see her. She prepared a will and had it witnessed during her son's socially distanced 5th birthday party. Imagine teachers' surprise when the board was presented with a plan that had no teacher involvement. After working for free over the summer to help guide the district in a reopening plan for the fall, management decided to go ahead with the plan that did not receive any teacher feedback. After presenting that plan to teachers in the community at large, support for reopening decreased at both town halls. Any plan that includes reopening needs to be discussed in good faith with the stakeholders involved. We hear district leadership say that they are consulting with experts. Why are you not consulting with the teaching experts? There is a long way to go between now and a possible reopening, but we must not forget the simple message. Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools. The Association of Pleasanton Teachers has long maintained that Pleasanton students deserve the very best. If we can't guarantee our students' safety, how is that the very best? If we can't provide a qualified teacher to deliver instruction to all students, how is that the very best? If our facilities are not secured in a way to limit exposure, how is that the very best? Questions beget more questions. Who is being tested? How frequently? If we rely on symptom checks, any elementary school teacher will tell you about the time a student was sent to school with a fever or hacking cough. And even if we rely on symptom checks, that is ineffective at best. Carriers can be asymptomatic and still spread the disease. These times call for leadership that protects the health and safety of our students and our staff. In addition to the questions about our physical safety, there are questions about the workload possibilities that emerge from in-person instruction in a new normal. Which students and teachers will be in person? How will instruction be delivered to fulfill curricular requirements while also not burning out our students and our teachers? No one wants to be in a classroom more than teachers. We thrive on that student connection. However, that means being in a safe classroom that protects the health of our students and our staff. After all, Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would encourage you and Michelle to meet with Julio, if you would, please. Okay, now 7.2, Conference School Employee Associations. Laura Martinez, President.
Good evening, President Maher, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, Cabinet, and the members of the community. First, I hope all are well tonight. It has been a very long, busy week with the opening of small cohorts on Wednesday, October 14th, and with the special board meeting that happened last Friday to discuss reopening of schools. Once again, our classified staff were called upon to fill a need to help supervise these small cohorts, and we have an amazing group of staff that have stepped up. These incredible classified professionals are fully committed to working to assist our students, even though they are nervous. It is a different type of classroom as they practice social distancing, wear their mask, and adjust to a new way of being in the classroom. They may sound like simple things, but they are not necessarily easy things to maintain all day long. Have these been easy times? No, they have not. Have we done everything right? No, we haven't. Do we try our best? Yes, we do. Could we do better? Yes, we can. We can do better from our leadership down, better in communication, better in meeting our safety needs, better in thinking through our processes, better in supporting one another, better in not jumping too quickly and taking a moment to really understand what the next step should be. These have been trying times for our staff during this pandemic. We continue to shift and do our best to meet the needs of the students, certificated staff, management, and the community. CSEA staff has been here providing services all throughout PUSD, and we show up and make a contribution every day, even though there are concerns in regards to safety for all. We continue to do our best, keeping our buildings sanitized, utilizing PPE, and improve our protocols so that we can be at work safely. The special board meeting made it clear schools will be reopened, and looking ahead, we need to make sure that we are ready for the thousands of students that we would be welcoming back. We need to work together to have a concrete and thoughtful plan to prepare each and every site to be ready for our students, staff, and administrators. CSEA negotiated an MOU for reopening. The work needs to be done now to implement the protocols yet to be done, get the training yet to be done, figure out our staffing for maintaining these protocols, testing, and consider our classroom spaces to socially distance. We need to get ready. The community needs to be ready to do their part to be at school safely too. Hard work is good, smart work is better. Our classified staff continues to support the administrators, certificated staff, students, and the community. We continue to work side by side to come up with solutions with our certificated staff on the best ways to educate our students in Pleasanton. We are linked together by a common goal as we work together to give our students the best. It is with all of our continued efforts and collaboration that our contributions will lead us to results. We each have to do our part. We need to stay the course and continue to do with the best intentions. Please, let's be kind, lift each other up, support one another. We are stronger and better together. So let's get it done. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, next item is 8 community comments.
President Maher, could I make a request, please?
Sure.
Dr. Haglund, this is the second meeting in a row where our Association of Pleasanton Teachers has stated that there was no teacher involvement and they were not consulted with this plan. Would you please provide the board with the dates of the meetings that happened with the APT leadership and get that information to us in a weekly update?
We'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you, President Maher.
Okay. Item number 8 is community comments. Lanita will be keeping the timer tonight on her screen during public comments. Due to COVID-19, public comments have changed. School board meeting procedures, TV 30s allow only audio at this time, adding a full screen public comment when the speaker is talking. Individual speakers shall be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board on this item for the sake of time. Blue comment form are for items not listed on the agenda. Patrick, do we have some public comments?
Yes, we do, President Maher. The first comment comes from Finn McShane. Then we'll follow with Rachel Wysong and then Siva Raj. So Finn, if you're with us, go ahead.
How many do we have, Patrick? Okay, Patrick.
Finn, are you there?
Yes. He was probably waiting because I asked you a question. It's Finn, did you say? Hello,
Finn McShane.
Mr. McShane?
Hi,
Or she, I'm sorry.
I'm here.
I'm sorry. You're on.
Hi. My name is Finn McShane. I'm in second grade at Valley View. I really want to go back to school with my friends. I have friends who switched to private school, and they've been back since August with no problems. Can I please go back?
Mom or Dad, would you like to help? Oh. Well, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Patrick, are they still on the line?
I think I saw mom pop in a second ago.
Okay.
You still have
Mom,
50
would you like to
seconds
speak?
if you'd like to finish your comment, Finn.
Mom, would you like to finish? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Next, we have Rachel Wysong, followed by Siva Raj, and then Christine Lutz.
Okay. Ms. Weisslein?
Hi. Wow, that last comment exactly proved my point. I'm a parent of a disheartened first grader. I'm coming to you this evening to implore you to figure out a way to support all your students better, especially younger students. Those of us with newborns and babies and young elementary school students may not be the majority, but we are in the group that needs the most help. We cannot wait until January. Figure out in-person instruction for our youngest students before then. Online learning is an extremely poor substitute for in-person learning. Judging by just what you heard, that is what I go through every single day. The younger the student is, the more it requires of an adult who can actually manage the programs. What 5 or 6-year-old can manage a 5-hour schedule, enter passwords correctly, reboot their computer when it needs updating because Zoom won't work, like in the last call that just happened, can copy and paste a link and appropriately fill out a Google form. My 6-year-old is asked to fill out a Google form every week with how many minutes she spends exercising. She has no idea how many minutes she spends on her bicycle, and she doesn't know how to spell bicycle without my help. I would rather have her riding a bike than filling out that Google form every week. How did we get here? 7 months into a pandemic, and supposedly one of the best school districts in the state cannot figure out how to get 5 to 8-year-olds back in the classroom once or twice a week for a few hours. What's really going on here? We've managed to go back to soccer, basketball, dining, haircuts, nail salons. Bowling alleys are about to open this Friday, but we can't figure out how to teach our children safely in person. Are all these teachers who feel school is so unsafe and vomiting into trash bags abstaining from all of the above mentioned activities? Are they completely isolated at home and not seeing friends or family? Do they wear a mask every single time they go outside and take a walk? Judging by what I see every day in Pleasanton, I highly, highly doubt it. The data from New York public schools who went back in September is this. Out of 16,348 staff members and students tested randomly by the school system in the first week of its testing regimen, there were only 28 positives. That is 0.17%. We have seen this repeated in other school districts as well. My best friend is a principal in New Orleans where they have started in-person schooling with stable cohorts of 24 humans. They have been open for 6 weeks full-time and have had 0 COVID outbreaks. Do we really think it's so much more dangerous in Pleasanton than it is in New York, New Orleans, San Diego, Roseville, or South Lake Tahoe, among other places? All these places have managed to go back. Are we getting too comfortable behind our computer screens? And why bother making a hybrid option if it was never really an option? The hybrid option was popular. School started and we trudged along knowing the county needed to get the numbers down and there was safety equipment that needed to be put in place, filters, mask testings, etc. All of the chips fell into place and a timeline for opening became available. But nobody asked the parents how things were going. Nobody resurveyed like they did multiple times over the summer, the parents asking to see when they wanted to exercise the in-person or hybrid option. It was assumed we didn't. I don't understand what happened
Rachel, I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off, but if you could wrap it up. I would.
Okay, but you asked me to teach my child for 5.5 hours a day. You're going to listen to me for 3.5 minutes here. Nobody bothered to tell us when the meeting was where you would be making this decision last week. We got bait and switched. We were told to go to a town hall Thursday night where nothing happened. Friday night, where the information was made, a bunch of teachers were complaining. Not a single parent who was only a parent got to talk. I really, really don't appreciate that. And those 2 meetings were set over dinner. Those of us with babies and newborns, like I mentioned earlier, we had to feed our children, bathe them, read them stories, and tuck them into bed. All the things that parents are supposed to be doing. We can't do both. We can't continue to do both. The input into your decision-making was dominated by teachers. I didn't even think to send an email. I assumed you would be good on your word when the county approved us to go back and allowed for hybrid model that you would do that. Instead, you went back on your word. Parents who were newer to the public school system didn't know we needed to call in and advocate for our children. We are tired and run down right now, and this decision was a huge blow. Our children are losing more at home from the long-term ill effects of being isolated, interacting with computers, than their very minimal risk to the virus if we open up carefully and with all safety precautions in place. And here's the thing. What was being proposed was so minimal, 90 minutes once a week. And do you even know how much of a lifeline this would be for my daughter? I'm not worried about the academics. The kids are missing recess and the 15 minutes before school where they could talk to each other. What are you going to say to us in January, February, or March when it's still flu season? Without a vaccine, this virus won't be under control by then. So are we out for the full school year? Because if you won't give 90 minutes a shot now and the numbers look good, I can't imagine you ever feeling comfortable going back. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick, next. Patrick?
Yeah, sorry, Steve. I had to.
Okay. How many more do
we have? Siva Raj, followed by Christine Lutz, and then Jessica Norman, and then we have 3 after that.
Okay, good.
Hi, this is Shiva. I'm a single parent to 2 kids in the Pleasanton School District. My youngest is in grade 3. My oldest is a freshman in high school. I also run a business, so this is not the easiest of times to be doing all of this. And I'm really grateful for the amount of energy that the school district has put in into making it easy for students to log on and to kind of organize everything. I've also seen both my sons, work really hard at being able to do their school tasks and assignments, etc. But here's the hard truth. They are not learning. Attending Zoom classes and turning in assignments is not education. I'm not seeing them learning. I'm not seeing them their eyes light up with the joy of discovery. I'm not seeing them eager and enthusiastic about participating in school. For them, attending Zoom is right now the biggest pain in their lives. And I can't understand how we expect kids and teenagers to be sitting in front of the laptops for 70 minutes sometimes, nonstop, listening to lectures. I wouldn't be able to do that. I would not be able to do that. How do we expect little kids to be doing that is just beyond my comprehension. And I appreciate that this was something we had to do when we had no choice, but now we have a choice. We have a choice about bringing them back to school. Even if for short periods of time, we have the choice. And I'm not seeing us make that choice when other school districts in the Bay Area with comparable levels of infection, like Los Altos and Palo Alto, etc., are actively trying to bring the kids back to school. And kids are starting in school over there. And I don't see a plan at this point for high school or middle school, which I appreciate is controlled by Alameda. But I do want to see us accelerate our plans for elementary, where it's actually possible for these kids to go back and start to learn again. They are not learning. They're not learning to get educated. And I'm really, really genuinely worried that they're going to hate education from just the experience they've had in the last few months. Thank you for the opportunity to share my feedback.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Christine Lutz, followed by Jessica Norman, and then Tyler Young.
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I feel like we need more pressure to open schools. Parents are stressed to the max, and I believe because of that, we do not have enough involvement. The constant revolving door of emails that never have any answers are a lot to weed through and frankly feel out of place, feel out in a place so that additional questions are never asked. How can we make it easy for parents to get involved without doing as much research as we have to? How can we put pressure on the teachers to go back to the school to do their jobs traditionally, or at a very minimum, back to the hybrid program that was suggested in the beginning of all of this? I work a full-time job, and that has been extremely flexible, but at some point I will be asked to return to the office. And then what do I have to do with my children? If I lose my job, do I get to sue the district? Do I get to become a teacher and risk my life in order to get children back to school? Corporations have been more than generous these past 7 months, and it's time to get the ball rolling at more than a snail's pace for our community. What other industry would be okay with a 7-month non-plan, essentially? How is this acceptable for anyone's job, union or not? There have been no straightforward answers, and it is beyond frustrating. If we've had a green light for more than 2 weeks, how have we not had anything in place? What is it exactly that we need? What is the answer to that? What do we need? Masks? Plexiglass? What is it? There's nothing lined out. There's nothing lined out for the options to reopen even a little bit for the 90 minutes, 2 times a week. We moved to Pleasanton for a reason. It's school and it's safety. We don't have near the options of a private or charter school as other areas do. It feels like we are being held hostage by both the board and the teachers union. And after 7 months, it's a very tired feeling. People do not have the sympathy they once had, especially when it comes to our children. We want them to learn in the best way possible. The Zoom calls are not it. Being told that things are going smoothly is one of the biggest insults of 2020. The past 2 meetings were given examples of how easy and smooth virtual classrooms are going. This is a lie. Things are not smooth. Things are not easy. In my 2 classes, the teachers are wonderful, and I'm so grateful for them. Their lessons plan are wonderful, but this is anything but wonderful. Massive meltdowns, one after the other, have become, I have seen my children lose their confidence, think they are not smart, and that no one wants to be around them. It is awful. I have friends, close friends who are teachers, and say they are scared to return to work because of COVID. However, I know for a fact that they have no problem vacationing, running to grocery stores, Target, or getting a coffee. How is this acceptable? What exactly is it that we need to do as a district, a school site, a classroom, whatever it is? What do we need to do to feel safe enough to return to school? Masks, sanitizers, medical grade wipes. What is it? What are the demands? The community would come together to provide this. What are they? And lastly, if we're going by science, then say we're going by science and do it all together. It feels like this is being back and forth and just we're getting played by like pawns. It's a horrible feeling, as if 2020 hasn't given us enough. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Tyler Young, followed by Eric Gunson, and then Kelly Mikashi.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. My name is Tyler Young, and I'm speaking in support of reopening our schools as soon as possible. I wish I could adequately describe to you how frustrating and hopeless I feel when I watch my 5-year-old son cry because he has to do his daily Zoom, and he doesn't understand what is expected or required of him. He has no opportunity to make friends or interact with other children. Zoom is not school. Maybe it is an adequate substitute for a college or high school course, but not for a kindergartner. I'm not sure that it's not doing him more harm than good. Quite simply, my son is being harmed and I don't know how to help him. I know there are risks associated with the virus and that no one can guarantee 100% safety. We just listened to the vice president of the teachers union talk for a long time about guaranteeing safety to students and staff. We can't do that now, and we might never be able to do that. It's an impossible standard. It also asks us to ignore that schools all over the country and all over California has successfully returned to in-person attendance. I know the school board has argued that it is different for us because our regulations are different, but the fact is that it is possible. And to the extent the board is not doing it, it is because they are choosing not to. I realize that some people might not choose to come back immediately, but the whole reason for a hybrid model is to allow those who feel they need to stay home to do so. Just as I would never choose to enforce my choices on their families, the choices of the most cautious among us should not be forced on the hundreds of children who are losing a year of development that they will never get back. You all have more experience with the educational system than I do, so you must know even better than I do how costly it is to lose a year of intellectual and social development at 5 years old. By choosing to keep schools closed, we are forcibly imposing that cost on 5, 6, and 7-year-old children. They do not deserve it. We owe them better. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll have Eric Gunson and close out with Kelly Mikashi.
Good evening, and thank you for your opportunity to comment on these important and divisive issues. I represent my wife, who commented in the October 8th school board meeting, and our 5 kids, 3 of who are in school, a 5th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner. As our family grew over the years, I was excited for the opportunity to relocate our family to Pleasanton from the South Bay. As a product of this school district and son of a longtime Pleasanton School Board member, I knew we could count on a community environment that would support families. When the pandemic hit and issues of reopening schools emerged, my wife dove headfirst into the fight to get schools open, particularly for kindergartners through 2nd graders. I was nervous for her as I saw an uphill battle against some parents and many teachers, and personally could see no proper argument against the board's safety first mindset. However, my stance changed when on October 16th, Superintendent Hagelin presented a plan that not only met county safety requirements, but exceeded them. After all of the effort of extremely competent professionals in administration, he firmly believed it was the best plan to assist families and students with the emotional, social, and intellectual challenges that the pandemic has brought to our schools and community. It was in that same October 16th meeting where members of this very board conceded that the issues to consider were no longer safety related. With safety first off the table, I was disappointed to see the majority of the board give into the pressure of the dramatic safety examples and teacher involvement. While this was a concern, I was most concerned with the priorities of the board that became evident. With safety addressed, the next concern of the board was the political process of gathering input and logistics, as evidenced by the extension of opening from November, December to January. The next priority was not the well-being of children, youth, and their families. I see this as an abandonment of strong leadership and character evident in those who supported, built, and strengthened our schools and communities in earlier years. Those same qualities that influenced me throughout my early life and drew me back to the family center community. Regarding the motion and vote to reopen schools on January 4th, as opposed to November 30th or December 6th, I respectfully ask the board and educators to reconsider their priorities and support a more aggressive plan to address the emotional, social, and intellectual challenges of students and families, particularly those in kindergarten through 2nd grade. With safety first addressed, the very next priority should be the welfare of students and families and getting them back to school. Just as there are parents, teachers, and students that are uncomfortable, there are parents, teachers, and students that want to go back, should go back, and shouldn't be held back from attending school in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Kelly Mikashi.
All right, good evening. Dr. Hagelin, the district cabinet, and trustees of the board. I'm Kelly Mikashi, a candidate as a trustee for the POC School Board. I'm also a parent of 3 children in the district. The plan that was approved for reopening on July 14th was established through a vetted process that included involvement with all stakeholders through surveys, town hall meetings, and most critically in partnership through the task force and steering committee. With the continual updates being made with Alameda County Public Health Department on almost a daily basis, I ask the district to please reconsider reestablishing both the task force and the steering committee so that any new updated proposals, reopening plans are adequately represented with everyone's voice. This is especially most critical for any hybrid model proposed if and when modified from the July 14th meeting, because those initial proposals were clearly communicated to the entire school community. So any changes should be done in the same manner. We know that remote learning has been difficult, not only for our students and for our parents and teachers as well. We all must remember to maintain, in order to maintain the trust and confidence from everyone, how these decisions are made for reopening are fundamentally essential and must stay in the forefront. Please survey our parents and teachers now. What is working? For example, with remote learning, what is not? When we consider a hybrid model for instruction, what makes most sense? Please resurvey our students, parents, and teachers together. For instance, perhaps team teaching versus concurrent instruction in some situations may help to maximize resources and should be considered. Whatever it looks like, for the effort that we're doing to make our students on site, the instructional minutes on site must be maximized. We must continue to think outside of the box. We thank you for your hard work. We know this is not easy. Thank you, trustees, Dr. Hagelin, and to the district cabinet for continuing to refocus on meaningful reopening plans that will work for all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick, any more?
Steve, that's it.
Okay. Next, we have our student board member report. Rachel?
Yes. Good evening, President Maher, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Hagelin. Thank you for having me here tonight to report for Amador Valley High School. To start off, I'd love to highlight the admirable efforts of our teachers for these past few months as they've continued to find new ways to maintain an engaging, albeit virtual, classroom. Many of our teachers are taking advantage of the school's subscriptions to various digital tools and platforms like Pear Deck and Edpuzzle to involve active student participation in their lessons. For instance, Edpuzzle allows teachers to assign students informational videos or even TED Talks, and then asks them multiple choice or free response questions throughout the video to ensure that students understand key concepts and ideas. Many teachers also use Pear Deck to involve students in their lectures. Instead of reading slides and listening to their teachers speak, students can answer questions or complete tasks in accordance with the material on each slide and receive live feedback from their teachers. Our math department is looking to integrate a platform called Delta Math into their lesson plans to help facilitate the visual aspect of learning math. Delta Math will allow students to create graphs, geometric shapes, angles, and equations all on their computers. Our teachers have also done a great job of increasing outreach to students for support during intervention and access periods, making sure that their access Zoom links are available for all students and accommodating for student schedules if needed. Our counselors are offering help to our many seniors who are in the process of applying to colleges right now, holding Q&A sessions every access period, sending out loads of resources, and hosting sessions outside of school hours as well. I'd love to highlight the work of our librarian, Mr. Scher, who has worked really hard this past quarter, putting together several projects at the same time. He's holding bi-weekly library book drop-offs and pickups so that students still have access to all library resources while remote learning. He has helped organize the AV Book Club to provide students with space to discuss their readings with their peers. And Mr. Scher, lastly, is working on holding a school-wide election to encourage civic engagement among students. And then moving into activities outside of the classroom, AV Leadership has tried to uphold tradition at Amador, holding our Breast Cancer Awareness Week last week from October 12th through 16th. The event was modified as students were able to participate by sending in photos of their pink clothing and decorations on social media in support of breast cancer awareness. Our Wellness Committee and Support Counselor Mrs. Yu have partnered up to host several baking classes and meditation lessons for students during access periods. Even virtually, we're maintaining our emphasis on students' mental and physical well-being. Our Wellness Center has now even transitioned into a virtual format for students. From October 27th through 29th, we will be holding a socially distanced event to take yearbook and ID photos for 9th through 11th graders and new to Amador seniors. Since last board meeting, we hosted a principal's coffee on September 22nd for parents who could meet and speak directly with our principal, vice principals, and counseling staff about everything going on at Amador, including some campus facility updates. Our campus has been completely repainted during the summer, and our campus is now looking great for when our students are able to return. Additionally, Amador has partnered with the community group We Are Pleasanton to raise money with donors to install a shade structure outside the MP room. The shade structure will provide shade over the area of the quad from the grassy hill to the senior cafe, and with this new structure, students will have more space. They don't have to cluster around one area for shade. The project has proved very successful thus far. We've already raised $90,000 in the first week. Our effort to fund a new shade structure was also the cover story in Pleasanton Weekly. To finish off, with regards to school athletics, unfortunately, I don't have any scores to report. However, CIF and eBalls still have a December 7th start date for practices, monitoring health guidelines as we approach those dates. Even though school is closed, Amador has been working really hard to help students connect outside the classroom. Thus, we've allowed cohorts on campus for music and athletic camps following county health guidelines. we want to create a sense of normalcy as much as possible at Amador's. That has really been our overarching objective this first quarter, and all of our staff has done a great job of meeting that goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Very good report. Dr. Hagelin, Superintendent's
Trustee
report.
Trustee Maher.
Yes.
Sorry, quick question. Rachel, thanks for the great report. Don't want to put you on the spot, but what's your sense at Amador about the students' interest in getting back to class versus how remote learning is going and that type of thing?
I think that, especially for high school students, they've adapted very quickly. It's only been a couple months, it's only been one quarter, but we're getting a sense of normalcy for sure with these new virtual classrooms. And I'm used to considering my desk at home my school area at this point. I think because we are older, we've had more experience in the school district, we know how to use our laptops, we know how to use the different platforms, we're able to adapt really quickly. And so thus far, I think our teachers have done a really great job, and our students at Amador have been able to transition very smoothly into a virtual learning format. I know that it might not be the same for different age groups, in that we've had a couple special day care students return to campus, I think on October 13th already. So it varies for special interest groups, but for a lot of the students at Amador have done a great job with virtual learning.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Dr. Hagelin?
All right, thank you, President Maher. First, I'd like to thank staff, families, and the broader community for their engagement and collaboration as we have worked to better serve all students during remote learning. I look forward to continued engagement with our community as we move towards reopening as directed by the board for in-person, on-campus learning for students in grades pre-K through 5, beginning on January 4th, 2021. I am requesting a special board meeting to be held soon to publicly review the related modifications to the reopening plan document that will align it to board action from last Friday's meeting before submission to the county. We continue to discuss and address questions and concerns regarding how we will work to keep our team safe while upholding our obligation to meet the needs of students, including work to address isolation and mental wellness issues arising from remote learning. As I shared earlier this week with our community, the decision about how and when to reopen schools is difficult at best, and that is true for all stakeholders. And by that I mean it's difficult for our parents, our students, our staff, and for leadership. While challenging, our students need us to do better, to think beyond academic programming and respond also to their social, emotional, and mental health needs. Pleasanton students truly do deserve the best. And they need that from each of us, each and every one. We can do this, but we must do it together. It's been inspiring to see students with special needs, English learners, and others struggling to access remote learning begin learning again and to thrive in the small cohort support programs that have opened at the schools. I am incredibly grateful to the classified staff and site administrators who stepped forward to make these programs possible for the students who needed them most. I'm also very grateful to the work of our parents and the extended family members who are working each day to keep their students engaged and supporting learning at home. We understand and appreciate the undue burden that this has placed on families, and we're working hard to find ways to help, even as we plan for the return to in-campus learning. To that end, if anybody's looking for a job opportunity that will make a difference in the lives of our young people and for future generations, I would encourage you to visit our website and explore our job postings on EdJoin. I also want to thank the teachers who have reached out with requests to work with their students in small groups on campus until school reopens. I'm eager to see these opportunities come to life and to benefit students who are asking for these connections and social interactions. One silver lining through all of this craziness has been the enormous progress that our facilities and construction team has made on Measure I-1 projects and on efforts to restore our facilities. We look forward to celebrating 2 milestones of this work next week. First, with a ribbon cutting at Harvest Park Middle School at the library on Tuesday, October 27th at 5 p.m. We'll celebrate the restoration of what is known as the heart of Harvest Park Middle School, which was tragically lost due to a fire 2 years ago. We'll also be hosting a small ceremony while live streaming the celebration on our Facebook page. Next up will be groundbreaking ceremonies for Amador Valley and Foothill High School classroom building projects that were funded by Measure I-1. They'll occur Tuesday, October 29th, one at 5 p.m. and the other at 5:45. Again, a small in-person celebration that will be live streamed on our district Facebook page. Mr. Maher, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hagen. Item 11, which is consent agenda. The Pleasanton Board of Trustees utilizes a consent calendar for items that require the approval of the board but are of routine nature. They act upon these items in one vote. Any member may remove an item for additional questions. Board members receive their agendas and backup materials 5 days in advance of our meetings. They have the opportunity to ask questions and to do research prior to our meeting. It is their intent to handle the routine items expeditiously so they have time to address more serious issues. Is there any item that anybody would like to pull?
President Maher, I need to pull 11.8.
Okay. 11.8. Okay. Anything else? Do I have a motion for all the other items?
I'll go ahead and move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of 11.8.
Second?
I'll second.
Hey, Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer, aye. Consent calendar moved, except for 11.8. Joan?
Yes, this is a ratification of our September contracts, and contained on the list is an MOU with the Alameda County Office of Education. As an employee of the Alameda County Office of Education, I need to make it plain to you that I am employed there. However, the MOU does not have anything to do with my area of work, and therefore that is the obligation that I need to do to make sure that you're aware that I'm an employee there. So with that, I would move approval of 11.8.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Maher, aye, and motion carries. Okay, moving on to report, discussions, and possible action. 12.1, Mr. Ahmad Shiko Salami, you're up. I think you're up for a lot of these.
Great. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and community. This item, I'm going to provide a little bit of a background, and then I'll turn it over to our consultant to kind of delve deeper into the presentation. So if you could, Patrick, get the presentation right, that'll be great. The district, our employees, when they retire, they either retire through the CalPERS, or that's our classified employees, and some are management, and through CalSTRS, and they receive retirement benefits for their years of service. In addition to that, the district provides what's called other post-employment benefits. And for our district, those are medical benefits that the retirees would receive from based on their age of retirement, their years of service. If they qualify for this, they would receive medical benefits through 65, through when Medicare kicks in. And so we're obligated to, under GASB 75, which is a government accounting, that we are obligated to provide an actuarial report which provides the board and the community what that liability of cost is. And through that report, staff and administration plan both for the annual cost, and it also helps with the long-term planning of this liability and this obligation. And so that's what this report is about. And staff has been working closely with the finance subcommittee to put some best practices in place. And so this report will kind of provide some of those discussion points, and we hope to bring to the board at the next board meeting the opportunity to develop a fund that would better address the long-term obligations under the OPEB. So with that, I'm going to invite Suraj Dada with NIHART to go through the presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Ahmed. And I'm wondering, can everybody see the presentation, Ahmed, or should I share my screen? So everybody can see it. I'm seeing some head shaking, yes. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, Ahmed, and thank you to the trustees, superintendent, and everyone else listening for giving us the opportunity to present today. My name is Suraj Dada. I'm the National Healthcare Director at NIHART. I've been with the firm for a little over 9 years. I'm a consulting healthcare actuary. First, I wanted to start off by saying I hope everyone's doing well. I hope your loved ones are doing well, staying healthy. And thank you for all that you all do as educators and teachers for children and parents out there. Ahmed, if you go to the first slide where we have the agenda, today we're just going to run through a few things. I'm going to be cognizant of everybody's time. We'll give you a quick refresher on the evaluation process, just to revisit kind of what goes into it. Yes.
You just hold on a minute. I'm going to have to put up the slide. I thought it was going to go up, but we have a little bit of technical issues. So if you give me 1 second, I'll put it up. And because our reception is not the greatest, if you could just talk a little bit slower, we'd appreciate that. So the presentation is now up and is in presentation mode. So, and then whenever you need to change your slide, just let us just say next slide, and then we'll move it along.
Sounds great.
Okay, so you can go ahead and begin.
Okay. Yep, and if we could go to the next slide here. We're just going to run through a couple things today. I haven't quite seen the transition happen yet, but I'll kind of talk while it's happening. The next slide shows the agenda. And like I mentioned, we're going to give a quick overview of what the evaluation process looks like, just as a refresher. We're going to then transition to going over the results for this year and talk about some of the key items that changed for the year, and also some of the key driver of cost decreases and increases. And then from there, we're going to kind of look ahead and look forward. I know that's one of the things that the district is considering is pre-funding an OPEB trust, that Ahmed mentioned, and the items on that as well. So, starting off on this slide here, just a refresher of the evaluation process and kind of what goes into it. Every time we work with the district on an OPEB evaluation, there's several key items that we need to collect directly from the district. The first one, and probably most importantly from the district, is the census information. This is simply a listing of individuals that are eligible for the plan, both current retirees that are receiving benefits, but then also current active employees that may be eligible for benefits down the road. We also collect confirmation on the plan's benefits, if there's any changes year over year, anything that we need to be aware of from a benefit standpoint, and what's being promised to current and future retirees. We want to gain confirmation on those items. And then obviously, the health plan and the health plan premium rates that are offered to current retirees and future retirees is extremely important for us in the work that we do. And so, we take all that information in, we run it through our evaluation software, and it helps us generate the liabilities that we show in our GASB 75 report. And, essentially what we're doing is we're looking 10, 20, 30 years into the future in trying to predict when individuals will retire, trying to predict when individuals might terminate from the district, try to predict how long retirees are going to stay in the plan and receive those benefits that are being provided to them. So a very long-term look. Many key assumptions go into that, as we have this on the third bullet point here. You kind of break these down into three big categories: demographic assumptions, economic assumptions, and healthcare cost assumptions. All three equally important. All three have impacts on each valuation year. And some of these assumptions are dictated by how GASB 75 tells us to set that assumption. Other ones, we have some more room for professional judgment, more room for looking at historical experience. If you go to the next slide, please. So for this past evaluation year, this slide sort of summarizes exactly what changed and what the impact was. I won't go into bullet by bullet detail here, but overall, liabilities increased about 6.5%. In the prior reporting period, liabilities were around $29.3 million, and in this most recent reporting period, those increased to $33 million. Two of the key things that sort of changed were reasons for the increase. One was demographic changes in the plan. That's essentially sort of changes that inherently happened within the census information that we were provided. And second thing being the discount rate. And the discount rate is something that we have to set a certain way based on GASB 75. And so those are two items that work to increase liability. But then we had some offsets. Offsets and different recommended assumption changes that we have listed here that help to bring things sort of back down. So again, this slide's meant to sort of summarize the significant liability drivers, and we'll get into some more detail here with subsequent slides. And, getting into some of that detail, these are some of the key drivers and assumptions that sort of go in to our actuarial model. And the first and foremost, probably important for me and for evaluation is underlying healthcare costs, and the trends at which those are increasing. The district is part of CalPERS, a very large community-rated health plan. Those types of health plans can have more stability year over year in terms of cost increases. So that's a benefit that allows us to set that assumption more accurately. But at the end of the day, as Ahmed mentioned, start things off, this is a healthcare benefit that we're trying to predict and value in terms of costs going forward. And as everyone, healthcare is one of the more sort of unpredictable things, unfortunately, in terms of when a participant is going to utilize the plan more often than not. So it makes it sort of difficult to predict that way. But being part of the community pool is beneficial to making those accurate predictions. The second item, the discount rate that I already touched on, this is driven by the GASB 75 standard. We have to follow a certain set of rules in setting this. The discount rate decreased from 3.5% to 3.15%. That's about a 35 basis point change. That ended up causing about a 3% liability increase. So the OPEB liabilities that we value are very sensitive to the discount rate. And right now, because the plan is not funding liabilities, we have to set this based on the way GASB 75 tells us to do that. Now, if funding of OPEB trust does happen for the district, this assumption is very likely to go up, depending on how the district goes about that. So something that I'll talk about later on. And to help speed things along, I'll combine number 3 and number 4 here. The employer costs and eligibility and duration. Those are two things tied to the benefits that the district decides to provide to current retirees and future retirees. There were steps taken to create sort of date of hire cutoff dates where certain benefits are being provided to maybe employees that have been hired after or prior to a certain date compared to other employees hired after a different date. And so those changes that the district implemented several years ago has helped to sort of limit the ongoing exposure that there might be in terms of the liability. So between the benefits that are being provided and the duration at which those benefits are being provided, the district's in pretty good shape that way. But still, those are two key items in terms of what drives liability and where those go. Can you go to the next slide, please? I won't spend too much time on this slide, but this is kind of just iterating the different plan offerings that there are and what those premium rates look like. And I guess the key idea from this slide is as your premium rates change every year, the rate at which that change happened is going to be a great indicator of which direction your OPEB liability might go. Like I demonstrated on the prior slide, there's many things within the OPEB liability. One of the key things is your healthcare costs and the health plan premium rates for the plans that you offer. So if these were to go up at a substantial rate, you'd very likely see a liability increase at that same sort of rate, depending on how the other assumptions work out. So that's what I wanted to mention on this slide. Let's go to the next slide. We talked about some of the census inputs and how that can be impactful to OPEB valuation. Here we're just sort of demonstrating the changes over time, and we collect census information every 2 years from the district. And you kind of see, like I said, the changes over time here. From 2017 to 2019, there was an active employee participant increase that we saw in the census information that was provided. That's one of the reasons the demographic changes were the causes for increases. But having said that, overall, there's some stability here, which we certainly expect outside of any significant changes that would happen. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide shows the projected, what we call pay-as-you-go costs, or in other words, the annual cash costs that NIHART is predicting based on our models and all the inputs that are provided. For example, in 2031, we're expecting your annual cash expenditures to be $3.94 million in terms of what those annual costs are for providing benefits. That's not a discounted number. That's fast forward to 2031, what we would expect. Again, lots of assumptions built into our model. I can almost guarantee we won't be right about that $3.94 million once we actually get to 2031. But part of the work that we do involves those assumptions, involves looking forward and trying to predict the future. So this is sort of our annual best guess of what things are going to look like going forward. You can kind of see the growing pattern that the bar charts here sort of exhibit. And a lot of that is due to the healthcare cost increases that we're assuming. And then also things like retirement rates, with termination and withdrawal rates, factoring all that information in. This is a very consistent pattern to what we see with a lot of clients that we work with that are still offering OPEB benefits on an ongoing basis. So the increase isn't uncommon. I just want to make sure to make that point. We do see this with a lot of clients that we work with.
Suraj, if I could just add, I think this is a key slide here because this is what it cost us operationally on an annual year-to-year basis. And as costs increase and our employees retire, those costs, what this shows is those annual costs for us increase on an annual basis from where we are right now, about $1.5 million, close to about $4 million. Now, as Suraj indicated, the accuracy is going to depend on a lot of factors, right? But this helps us plan for the future. And so in the next slides, he'll explain why there are ways to reduce this liability and help the district. And so I think that's going to be critical in the out years as these obligations increase on the district. Okay, Suraj, I'll turn it back to you again. Thanks.
Sounds good. That was a great comment, Ahmed. Thank you for making that. Yeah, if we can go to the next slide. Just real briefly, summary of evaluation results. And I mentioned before, and probably the key figure on this slide is the total OPEB liability. That's what increased from $29.3 million to $33 million this past reporting period. And that's the balance sheet liability that GASB 75 requires the district to put on its balance sheet. So that's sort of the key figure here. Service cost is the annual accrual that for another year of service that your active employees have provided to the district. There's another year of service where they've accrued some more benefits and working towards being eligible for the OPEB benefits. So that's what that represents. And then the future service accrual is what we're expecting on a going forward basis. But again, the important number here is show that total OPEB liability and how that changed year over year. If you go to the next slide, Ahmed. And then, looking forward, and some of the key risks and key items that we would promote considering going forward. But the first two are maybe risks to plan in terms of annual premium rate increases and COVID, the impact of COVID-19. Those kind of go hand in hand. And you may have seen in the news, recently different insurance companies reporting, big profits this year, and a lot of that was due to the deferral of services earlier on this year. And there just wasn't as much claims running through plans, but those premium payments were still coming in to the plans. And so, overall, you might hear that now, but then the concern going forward is the deferral of those services and what impact that has on people's health going into next year and the year after. Is there pent-up demand and getting services taken care of? And why this matters to the district is because these sorts of things are going to have a direct impact on what happens with health plan premium rates. Like I mentioned, CalPERS being a community-rated plan, you're in a more advantageous position because it's a much larger pool of employers that can maybe absorb more than if you're sort of a standalone plan on your own. But these two items sort of go hand in hand, and items to keep an eye on as COVID-19 continues to develop, and obviously how impactful it's been, not just with health plans, but across the board, what that might translate to in terms of your premium rates. Capping costs with your future retirees, if there's an appetite or a desire to try to continue to cap costs to the district going forward, there's different ways that can be done, and you can go about it. In my opinion, there's already been great steps taken to do so. But obviously, there's a lot of plans that are doing a lot more drastic things, and whether that's within that side of the district or not, that's obviously up to everyone on the phone today. But having said that, that's I'm sure I mentioned. And then items number 4 and 5 kind of go together as well. Talk about potentially establishing an OPEB trust and funding these benefits going forward. And that goes hand in hand with completing long-term projections on liabilities and OPEB trust assets and what that relationship looks like over time. Advanced planning helps avoid surprises. We have that bullet point there listed for that reason. We believe it to be true. I think the more that you are able to plan and have a good funding policy, the better position you're going to be in terms of funding your OPEB trust. Go to the next slide. And then you're kind of looking at it both ways, the positives and the negatives of pre-funding into an OPEB trust. And I'll start with some of the positives. Whatever funds are put into your OPEB trust, that's a direct offset to the OPEB liability. So if you recall, a couple slides ago, I was showing a liability of $33 million. If the district $3 million in funds they had set aside for OPEB, the OPEB liability would be directly reduced by that, and it would be $30 million, so $33 million. So that reduces that balance sheet liability that you're required to book. So that's one positive thing that kind of come out of it. Eventually, as the trust were to gain more assets, trust assets are invested, and depending on the investment mix, there's the possibility of having investment returns that are essentially investment income into the trust without having to do too much in terms of contributions from the district. So as you continue to put funds in there, there's more principal sort of in the OPEB trust to gain investment income from, and another positive that sort of comes out of all this. And then the third bullet point, reducing the OPEB liability by having a higher discount rate. I'm not going to get too technical, but with an OPEB trust, we're able to use the investment rate of returns and say that's something around 6%. And as you noted on the prior slide, we were using 3.15 for this year. We're able to use a blend of the two, or actually the full 6%, depending on how the district goes about its funding. And with that sort of change, it's going to be very impactful for the overall OPEB liability. And anytime you increase that discount rate, it's going to reduce your OPEB liability. That's going to be a good thing. Some of the negatives, obviously, there's contributions and sort of a funding strategy that we're going to try to help provide and promote that the district tries to stick to. Obviously, those are more constrained in terms of your budgets and coming up with more funds, for this new bucket that maybe gets created. It takes a long-term commitment. This is an annual thing where you might put in some funds and then kind of let it just sit. Definitely to make it work and make it work long-term and supposed to be sustainable. It takes that long-term commitment. And the third item, these funds, whatever you decide to do, any funds that you decide to put in at initial startup, and anything going forward, those are all going to be tied up in the OPEB trust. And they only can be used for paying OPEB benefits, and you'll lose that sort of cash flow flexibility that you might feel like you have now by being able to use those funds in different places as things come up. But with the OPEB trust, you are not allowed to do that. Once the funds go in, you have to keep it in there and use it to pay for retiree health benefits going forward. And I'm going to go to the next slide, please. Just some different considerations. I already touched on the first one in terms of funding policy. And we have a lot of clients that are trying to do the right thing by setting up an OPEB trust and working to fund future benefits. But ultimately, some of these clients that we have end up not really establishing much of a plan. And that's one of the things that we definitely promote, and having a goal in mind. What's attainable? While being realistic, what's obtainable in terms of reaching an optimal funding level. And I think that takes working with your actuary, working with your budget team and finance and human resources and just the whole team of people to come up with the right plan that fits the district. I noted here CERP strategy. I think one of the things that Tom and Ahmed and myself are discussing that CERP might be an option in terms of OPEB trust funding. And if you're not aware of what that is or what that means, I won't get into that today, but happy to answer questions afterwards. But essentially it deals with your investment strategy, with your assets that you were to put into the OPEB trust. There's different equity and fixed income type mixes that you can choose from with CERP. And the more equity based, the higher rate of return that you're expected to get, sort of thing. So that's something for the district to be considering. And as new OPEB trusts start up, we promote having more of an equity based position just so you can start accumulating those assets at a quicker rate. And then last consideration, there's all those risks, especially when you add in an OPEB trust, there's investment or market risk that can be completely driven by the economy, and the district has no say in how the overall markets go, in terms of nationally or internationally. So that's a definite risk with the funds that are in there. Healthcare risk, like we talked about, the rate at which your healthcare costs increase is a risk to the plan, and then also just the demographic risk. If this plan is still open to what we call new entrants or new employees that you might hire 3 or 4 years from now, those employees could potentially still be eligible for these benefits going forward. So that's sort of the ongoing open risk that the plan has that we think should be considered as you think about establishing a OPEB trust. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things that NIHEART definitely promotes is trying to model different scenarios and different funding policies. I think as an entity or a plan sponsor that's thinking about funding your OPEB liability for the first time, there's lots of different ways, lots of different possibilities in terms of what's the right funding policy for you. And kind of have some snapshots here of some different variables that we consider. We try to make our results easy to understand, which is by no means meant to be any type of promotion of us. We just want to make you all aware as best that we can the different levers that you have, and also make it easy to understand because a lot of our work can be very technical in nature, and getting in the weeds can get you lost in translation, and keeping things simple in terms of like the chart that we have here on the bottom right. I think it's extremely important as you make your decisions. And I think that's all I had for the presentation. Happy to take any questions or concerns that there might be.
Trustees, any questions?
I do have some questions, Steve.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it was very hard to understand you. I generally get the concept of the OPEB liability, but I wanted to clarify a couple of things, and maybe Ahmad can answer these questions for the public in particular. So these expenses are not expenses that that change in any way by the establishment of this trust. We owe the by virtue of our bargaining agreements that we have now, we are paying the medical benefits that we offer up until our retirees reach the age 65. So whether or not we put this in a trust, we still have that pay-as-you-go amount every year, which is projected to grow, as you said before, from what it is now, about $1.5 million to like $4 million. Investing in a trust does not change that. Is that correct?
Correct. I think that it's a strategy so that we can better manage that. Currently, the district has set aside about $6.7 million towards this OPEB liability in one of its funds. And so it sits in the county treasury and makes maybe 1% or 0.5%. And so it's not part of a strategy that would actually help reduce or bring in additional revenues or a long-term plan. So the idea of a trust fund is that you put it in a fund that has a higher yield over time. And then with a strategy of if the district has the ability, they can add to the fund so that it grows. And as it grows, it's like any other type of investment that it'll grow. And so that the use of the funds can be utilized to pay for those obligations if needed. It's not like it's locked in there forever. And so what you want to do in the long run is have enough investment in there that you can pay for your annual cost from that investment. It's like an endowment fund, right? From the revenues that you get from the growth of that fund, you pay your annual cost. That's the ultimate goal of creating this trust. But in the short term, we'd start to reduce our liabilities, we start to earn more money on our investment, and it would be, again, that long-term strategy to help reduce cost operationally on an annual basis for the district.
And so for the sake of let's reduce it to a concept, would you look at this akin to, say, a certificate of deposit that somebody might invest their money in? So you're getting a higher return because you've agreed to leave your dollars in place for a specified period of time, and in return you get a higher dollar amount as opposed to a completely liquid asset.
Correct. Or maybe another analogy I would say is saving for your son or daughter's college. So you're putting money into a fund that will be utilized for those expenditures. You have different strategies. When they're younger, you put it in, it grows. When they get to the age of college, now you can draw that down. It's a similar function of strategy to be able to pay for those large expenses that, when your kid goes to college, you have.
And so then when I'm looking at the risks, two of the risks I feel like we have, whether we're in a trust or not. The healthcare cost risk applies to us whether or not we invest in a trust, because future healthcare costs increase and we would have to pay as you go. We'd have to increase our pay as you go amount whether or not we're in a trust. And then the demographic risk is also the same whether or not we're in a trust. That's a different choice we could make about, perhaps working on, what the agreements are, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not we're in a trust. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So really the biggest risk is currently now we're in a very low yielding investment that does not help us pay these costs over time, but it's also very safe. There's a little volatility in that. And whereas in the trust, we would be in exchange for, locking this in, and we would be able to invest in a higher earning asset, but there is investment risk at that same time.
Correct. Yeah. Typically, they have different strategies, and you're in it in the long run. And you'll see the different strategy when CalPERS comes next week to give, well, not next week, but at the next board meeting, the presentation, they'll kind of go through that. The other thing that I would say in that is, right now our liability is not reduced, because you can do whatever you want with that, So the liability is not reduced. So the district's position in the market for whatever it wants to do in the market, if it wants to get a COP, it wants to get a trans, that liability is there on the books. But when you put it in a trust fund, you actually reduce your liability. So that $33 million will go down by whatever you put in, and then that discount rate, which he was talking about, will also help drive it further down. So when you show your books to anyone who's looking at the district's position, they'll be, this is a school district who is prudently taking care of its obligations. And I think that at the last City of Pleasanton meeting, they had also developed a similar trust fund to handle some of their, I believe, CalPERS. They may have OPEB or may have other things, but they had done that. And so again, we'll go deep more into this, but there's over 500 public agencies who have taken those prudent steps.
And once we're in the trust, are there any circumstances under which, other than paying our pay-as-you-go amount for our obligation under OPEB, is there any other ability to use the funds if they're put in the trust?
Yeah, so I think that right there, that right there is that flexibility, is that rainy day kind of flexibility of the district. It's a metered approach. It's not like, it's a metered approach in terms of, okay, we're financially constrained. If we can't pay as you go, we're going to use those funds to go. So it is the CalPERS Cert Fund allows for that.
So you could withdraw principal, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you can withdraw that. You can also, the benefit that like I see in it, for example, is by earning that 6%, you can actually reduce your ongoing by pulling that piece out and paying your OPEB liability. And then if you were in a situation where it was a financial crunch, you could actually utilize the principal to pay for the pay-as-you-go portion.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Yes, I do, President Maher. I just kind of piggybacking a little off of Trustee Larson on this. So the investment, the delta on it, to me, it seems like the rate of return would be quite a bit better with the trust. And realizing the long-term gains on it, these are obligations we are going to have to pay. Like you said, there are liabilities and we're going to have to pay them. The cons that are stated on here, the strains on competing budgetary expenses, yes, but at the same time, if these are liability we're going to have to pay, doing this long-term planning is a good idea. I'm not quite sure if I'm seeing any more downside to it. So if there is something I'm missing, could you kind of explain?
Yeah, I do not see a downside in it in any way, shape, or form. The only thing is like, we want to take this. It's a one-time dollars, right? We worked hard to save this one. It's like putting money in a savings account, and so to me, we know we have a liability and we have an obligation for the long-term structural, integrity of the district. This is a very prudent and wise way of going about it.
That explains it perfectly. Thank you.
Ahmed, there's no fee for pulling the money out each year to pay our liabilities?
All of these type of funds, including the CalBERS, have a small fee associated with managing the fund. And again, the CalPERS CERT Fund is the leanest of them all. That's why next week we will be recommending them.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Mark or Jamie?
That's not really a fee for pulling money.
No, it's not a fee for removal. That's just the regular management of the fund, like any fund.
Taking care of it, managing it.
Yeah, and I think Trustee Larson and Art can ask great questions, so I don't have any further.
Okay, Jamie.
I just wanted to say that I think this is a long time coming. I think I've asked about doing something with our OPEB liability for many, many years. So thank you so much for doing this work and getting this going. But I just did have one question though. The only way that we could reduce our expenses to OPEB is if we changed our benefit package, right?
Correct. The way to reduce the liabilities in the long term, other than investing money to reduce it, and what we talked about, is to be able to make changes in our future. Basically, what we agree to in terms of the benefits that we will provide, and those things. I think have been discussed amongst leadership, and some initial steps have been made. But I think that what we need to recognize is OPEB cost and all retirement, type of benefits are basically compensation to employees, deferred compensation. So it takes away from the district's ability to provide compensation today because it is paying for compensation in the future as in terms of retiree. So for every $1 million, $2 million, $3 million that the district is paying in these deferred compensations, there is less monies available for compensation today or for other things that the district wants to do today. So it's a choices that we make on how to allocate our the funds that we have available to us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and this was not an action item, it's just for this discussion, correct?
Yes, we'll bring the action item, which is to approve the agreement in joining the CERT fund next week, and then after that, there'll be further steps. This is just the first step in this process.
Good, thank you. Okay, 12.2, discussion and possible action to approve trans insurance resolution number 2020-2021.12, authorizing and approving the borrowing of funds for fiscal year 2020-21, the issuance and sale of a 2021 tax and revenue anticipation note, therefore, and participation in the California Education Notes Program. Ahmed.
Great, thank you. I'll provide a background. We do have a chat with Wang with Keegan and Associates, and also Tom, our Director of Fiscal Services, Gray, is also with us. So previously we've discussed that the state, as part of their approved 2021 budget, is relying on deferrals to be able to maintain basically our same level of 19-20 funding. And a deferral for the state means that beginning in February, they will basically, reduce their disbursements to the district. And so the state, as part of its funding formula, provides monthly disbursements to all districts in the state of California. The level of disbursements depends on, how much property tax we bring in locally. So in our community, about somewhere around 40 to 45% of our funding comes directly from those state disbursements. And so those state disbursements beginning February through June are going to be deferred into the following fiscal year. And so when we looked at this, and we did a cash flow analysis, there's going to be some low points in our cash flow, not because of what we are doing, it's because of the way the state is not providing the monies that it has indicated that it will provide to us. And so to bridge those shortfalls in cash flow, there are a couple mechanisms the district can use. One of them is called interfund borrowing, and we will utilize that for small gaps that may occur during the year. If it's a short 1 month thing that we're low on $2 million or $1 million or 500, we can borrow from some of our other funds, Fund 40, which is a capital fund, the Sycamore Fund. Those are funds that are flexible and we can do it. And the board has authorized us to do that, staff, and to report that on a monthly basis. In terms of these longer deferrals, what will happen is it will cross 2 fiscal years, right? We're not going to get the money in until the next fiscal year. And so therefore, these short-term loans, which are called trans, are the way to bridge those gaps. And so we've structured this, and the amount of $15 million is a maximum. We may do some more cash flow analysis with Keegan and say, oh, we only need $5 million, we only need $6 million, right? We will take out what we need, because obviously you are paying some short-term interest. You take that money and then it does sit in the county treasury, and then, so it's, you're paying a little bit of interest, you gain a little bit of interest back, you pay your obligations to make your cash flow through, and then when the state provides the monies in the next fiscal year, you then repay those loans back. And so that's all of the paperwork and all the legalese, and Chet can go into a lot more deeper than I can, is to set up those short-term loans. And so we would be grouped into similar type of districts, and those trans would be then available to us and other districts like us, and that's the vehicle by which many school districts in the state of California are going to bridge their shortfalls in the coming months.
So your recommendation?
My recommendation is to approve the resolution and the documents that are attached. And if there's any further questions, our financial advisor would be happy to go into the details.
Okay, trustees, any questions? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval of 12.2.
Second. Okay. Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And Trustee Maher? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, 12.3. Report discussion and possible action to approve the agreement with Westside Landscaping and Concrete for field renovation at Hart and Harvest Park Middle Schools. Reject all bids for Amador and Foothill High Schools, Hearst Elementary, and Vintage Hills Elementary School.
Great, thank you. I'll start this off and give it to John to fill in the details. But we're really excited about these set of projects. We are committed to reconditioning and rebuilding our fields. And we put some packages together, and now the work's going to begin soon. So I'm going to let John Trostek with our facilities and construction team over there kind of walk everyone through in terms of what our plans are on the projects that we are asking for approval and the bids that we are asking to be rejected. John?
Thank you, Ahmad. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and community. This is an exciting wave of projects that is going to be coming out. This is the first wave of them. And it is, we grouped up together with Gates and Associates, who is a landscape architect, to come up with bid packages that were consistent among all the schools, the elementaries, the middle, and the high. And so We did bid out the elementaries, the middles, and the high schools on September 24th this year, but we got mixed results. We had 3 bid packages. We had one for the high schools, which were Amador and Foothill. Another was for the 2 middle schools at Hart and Harvest Park. And another was for 2 elementary schools at Vintage Hills and Hearst. And so the mixed results were that the middle schools actually got 3 bidders, and they were good bids. And we are recommending tonight the low bidder, which is Westside Landscaping and Concrete. Unfortunately, the high school had only 1 bidder, and it was a very high bid. So we're not recommending approval. We're recommending that they're rejected by the board tonight. The elementary school had another mixed thing. We had 4 bidders, but we had some bidders that didn't sign things. They were basically non-responsive. And then the next lower bid was actually above our budget. So we're recommending rejection of those bids as well. So let's see. We also had talked to every one of the school sites, elementary, middle, and high, found out the best times for rebidding these projects. It is the best time to go forward with the middle schools at this time. But for the high schools, we found that going for the springtime, which is better for the planting, it's better to plant either in the spring or the fall, not the summer or the winter. And so we found that there was a lot of activity scheduled during the spring semester at the high school. So we are not recommending to go forward with those until the fall of 2021. And this is an agreement also with the 2 high schools principals. The elementary schools, we would recommend having construction during the spring to where they can be usable later in the spring, actually. And so the elementary schools were accepting of those terms as well. They just want to get their fields restored. In the interim of the elementary and the middle and the high schools, the POSD staff and operations and such will do some repair work on the fields so that there would be, the fields are safer. They don't have as many holes in there. And they're flatter, and they will be reseeded to some extent if they can do that during the weather. We've also, through this process, had some thoughts about Alisal, and then there was toying with the idea of putting a cricket field at either Harvest Park, but it ended up actually having a more favorable area at Alisal. Alisal has a big field there as well. So we went under the CUPCA rules for bidding projects, and we got a good bid from the same contractor, Westside, who we are going to go through the CUPCA approval process. You'll see that as in next month's, the POs, the purchase of the purchase order, or approvals of the purchase orders. And, but it will not have the cricket field until fundraising is done to actually fund that portion of it. I'm not sure when that'll happen, but it will be in the future after the Alisal's field restorations.
Yeah,
so tonight, we're recommending, the administration is recommending 2 things. The recommending
Ed had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the cricket field. So we are in discussions, and I'm working on a memorandum of understanding with our user groups to bring that back to the board for review and discussion. So at this point, as John indicated, we're going to go ahead and do the refurbishment and reconditioning of our field at Alisal, and then once I've worked out the agreement with our user groups, bring it back for the board's consideration.
Great. Thank you, Edmund. Excuse me, John.
Oh, that's quite all right. And so the recommended motion is twofold. One is to recommend for board approval of Westside Landscaping and Concrete for Hart and Harvest Park field renovations. And the second is to recommend to the board to reject all bids for Amador, Foothill, Hearst, and Vintage Hills.
Okay. Is Alisal in there too?
Alisal is not shown on here, but we're going to go through a CUPCA process. And we've worked with Westside Landscaping to come up with a bid that's under $60,000. and we will be processing that soon.
Okay. Questions, comments?
So that would come back to us on the contract if it's under 45,000. Did we amend that to 60,000?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it would come back to us. We would see it on consent on the list of contracts.
Correct.
Good point. Any other comments, questions? I know the schools will be happy to see things done.
Yeah, this is great. I'll go ahead and move approval then of awarding the contract for Hart and Harvest Park to Westside, and rejecting the bids at Foothill and Amador, as well as Hearst and Intercepts.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Yee?
Aye.
And Trustee Maher? Aye. Okay, 12.4. Report, discussion, and possible action to approve the project budget increase to add one building to the portable replacement and new science building project at Foothill High School, and to approve amendment for HKIT architect's fees for the added building.
Go ahead, John. You got this.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad. This is an exciting project. This is part of the goals. This is actually helping fulfill the career technical education goals that that were part of the initial process of the project. And so it had two CTE applications that were applied for, but unfortunately only one got approved to the tune of upwards of $3 million. And so the second building never really got designed at that time. It was in concept, but it was not actually into working drawings and DSA approvals and that kind of thing. So now that we actually have two things going for us. One, we have the Amador and Foothill bids for construction under budget, over $2 million, almost $3 million. And then we also have the upwards of $3 million for the CTE funding that the district should receive sometime in 2021. And so what we're recommending tonight is to pull $3 million from the program contingency of Measure I-1 to pay for this at this time, actually just a budget shift, but to be refunded by the CTE funding once it is received by the district, so that we will not be actually taking for the long term out of the program contingency. Another thing that happened this week, which I did not attend, but I know Ahmad did and Dr. Haglin and people, they had a meeting with the city, which for a period of time, we have been working with them in terms of the traffic area out in front of Foothill High School. And with this process of Foothill, it's got some complexities, and one of which is the whole drop-off and the way that it works, and that there's two signals out there, and all these other things that we're trying to incorporate and solve at one time with one project. But it will be phased to a degree. But with the city, as I understand it, those with the city manager and various other people, they don't have that project to do the off-site improvements for the signal and the drop-off, or excuse me, the extra queuing turning area that they were planning on doing. At least their schedule is being a little postponed, and it's not aligning with our schedule. So what we're going to be bringing back to the board, hopefully in the November 12th board meeting, is a fee proposal for HKIT architects that would basically front-ending the design work for the off-site improvements with the signal and the turn area. And so, but we still have to work with the city to come up with the balancing of their money. They do have approximately $600,000 that they've mentioned that they would be contributing for the off-site improvements in the past anyway. But that off-site improvement estimate that they came up with and shared with us in the past was about 1.8 million, so it's a sizable amount. But we do have a lot more work that we need to do working with the city and coordinating that. But we want to keep our schedule with the Foothill project and get to our side with the architectural services to do on-site and off-site improvements. So you will see that ad service at a later time, hopefully in November. So that being said, the recommended motion is twofold again. One is to request the increase of the project budget and to add the one building, and also to add the Fifth Amendment to HKIT Architects to do the design work for the extra building. And the architect's fee is actually included in that $3 million ask. So it's a one-time ask is what we're doing. So if you have any questions, I'd be open for answering them.
John, this all falls under I-1?
Correct, it does.
Okay. Any other questions, trustees?
Yeah, I just have a clarification. So the grant money, I believe it will come sometime next year, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then that will be used to pay back the contingency fund, which we're pulling from, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And all of the monies for this project are kind of like what President Maher said, are in line with Measure I-1, what's earmarked for these projects, correct?
We are not, exactly. We're not asking for anything in addition to I-1.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of 12.4.
Second. Okay,
Second.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Larson,
Aye.
Trustee Yee,
Aye.
Trustee Arkin,
Aye.
and Trustee Maher, aye. Motion carries. 12
Yay.
point.
I said yay.
Oh,
We're all
yay.
just saying yay.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. 12.5.
Wait, before you go on, Mr. Maher, I would just like to once again say congratulations to Josh and the teachers at Foothill who wrote that grant application several times, and they really brought it home. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to see how creatively they approach that project as it starts to appear. So well done team, well done facilities and construction team for getting it taken care of. It's pretty exciting for Foothill.
What do you anticipate would be the length of time past the other construction that would be completed?
Approximately 1 year. The first building should be completed for occupancy of 2021 in the fall. And the second building, which you're approving here.
So John, there's something wrong with your feed. And so I'm going to ask Ahmad to go ahead and answer that question. You're all garbled. We can barely hear you.
Okay.
Okay. So the current building is set for about a year construction, and so we anticipate that the second building will be able to start once this initial building is done. So we'll have to go through DSA, get the approval, and then hopefully sometime around this time of next year would be bidding and then building that. So Foothill will see a continued construction presence for the next year or two to come for sure.
But good things.
Yes.
John, can I suggest that maybe you log off and call back in, see if we can't get a better connection for you?
Okay, and we're moving to 12.5. Is John handling this one too?
He is, but I mean, I could pinch it for him. So this
Report discussion, possible action to approve change order number 1 to Southwest Construction for the HVAC roofing project package 2 at Alisal and Harvest Park.
Great. So this is actually good news. Is that we built in a change order amount into our projects, and the contingency for that change order only gets utilized if there are needs to, to do additional work or and such. And so on the Alisal and Harvest Park Middle School, which we did re-roofing and HVAC, we went through that and we were actually able to not have to spend the change order dollars that were designated. And so there's a credit coming back to the district on that contract in the amount of about $53,000.
Good. Any questions on that?
I just have a procedural question. Typically, I mean, a change order would require our approval if it's, adding dollars. Is board approval required for a credit? Or is it just for transparency purposes?
I think it's for transparency. It's our process. I mean, it is a formal change to the contract amount. And so this, in this time, it's a credit. So yes, we could have put this in probably in consent, but we thought that it merited highlighting.
Thank you.
When you talk about credit, it's not really credit. We'll be getting cash back, won't we?
Well, let's say, for example, the contract was for $500,000. We haven't given them the $500,000. We've only given them the $450,000. So it's an adjustment in their amount. We only pay for work that is completed, and so they didn't do any change order work. So it's a credit in the books.
Yeah, that's certainly okay. Good. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval of 12.5.
Okay, second?
Second.
I'll second. No.
Okay. Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And Trustee Maher, aye. Motion carries. 12.6, report, discussion, and possible action to approve lease extensions with Mobile Modular.
Correct. I'll take this one. Amy Nichols, they had a little scare in their neighborhood. I'm hoping that she's safe and her neighborhood's safe, but there was a fire in the Oakland Hill areas around the 580-34. So she asked me to take this. So our prayers go out to anyone in that neighborhood that hopefully the fire department has been able to bring that fire under control. So this one, just really quick, the district has been leasing about, I think it's 27, 28 portables district-wide to be able to handle its enrollment growth over these years. Our developer fee funds are utilized to pay for these, and so we are extending those leases as we will need the portables for another year. However, the good news is that the Amador Valley, the Foothill, and Harvest Park, which is the bulk of the Heart. So that's the bulk of the portables. Almost 20 portables will be removed with the construction of those buildings, and that will save us close to $200,000 or close to $200,000 annually on lease payments, and help maintain our developer fees for what they're intended is to build and replace them permanently. But the portables do play an important role in those interim times when enrollment does spike up.
Great. Any comments other than good deal?
I'll move approval of 12.6.
I'll second.
Frozen.
Oh,
Steve?
He's frozen.
Frozen.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Trustee Yee?
Aye.
Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Aye.
I think we got Trustee Miller already, and then Trustee Maher, aye. Motion carries. Okay, any board reports or requests?
I do. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
I have a request, and maybe it's more of a second of a request, because I feel like we have some unfinished business from the last board meeting that we did. So when I made the motion that I did, it was designed to put an idea on the table for discussion, but that discussion was sort of cut off with the 3-2 vote. I want to get together. I guess that Dr. Haglund already suggested maybe a special board meeting, but I'd like to make sure we get together, or at least write a letter, which I've already taken the initiative to do, to address a couple things. First, that what the board's expectations of staff and the associations are in implementing the reopening plan. We talked about getting together to do that. And second, to reiterate our intention to expand that small group cohort process for our most in need learners. So again, I don't know, I guess I was going to say we could either do a letter or a special board meeting, but it sounds like Dr. Haglund has already raised the possibility of a special board meeting. So I guess I'm just reiterating that request.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Jamie?
I have a request.
Yes.
So the dollars for the that we've been using for the safety measures, the PPE, all of the supports, the learning loss mitigation funds and all of that, those have to be spent, it's my understanding, they have to be spent or obligated by December 30th. Is that correct?
Correct. Different dollars that have been provided by both the state and federal have different deadlines. The bulk of them through the CARES Act at this moment have to be expended by December 30th.
So I'd like to ask for a report in the weekly update of where we are in that process and what we plan to spend those dollars on in order to take advantage of them before they are expired.
We can do that. There are reports that we're required to give both to the state. Well, I think it's mainly to the state, so we can use that as a template, can't we not?
Correct.
Sure, but those are backward looking, not forward looking.
Yeah, actually, the state is requesting us to identify how the funds will be spent. So they're both, not just.
We have that information and we'll provide it. I at one of the previous ones we provided, but we'll update it again as to where we are. And it is a moving target. We meet regularly with all the departments and discuss the strategy. And then when the strategy changes and some of the target dates changes, then what we plan to do also changes. It is a fluid situation, but we'll provide you the report definitely.
Any other reports, requests? Dave, do you know when you want that board meeting?
I haven't picked a date yet. Let me collaborate with you. Sorry. Okay. We haven't identified a specific date yet, President Maher. I'll collaborate with you and we'll find a time that works best for everybody.
Okay, looking forward to it. Nothing further?
So we're adjourning back to closed session. Just a reminder, President Maher, with no anticipated action.
Okay. So with that, I adjourn the general public meeting at 9:06. And Dave.